The Dallas Cowboys have officially moved on from offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. What now? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on
Cowboys.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That is PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Dallas Cowboys have officially moved on from Kellen Moore. What was your initial reaction when you saw the tweet from Tom Pelissero?
My initial reaction was, man, I guess I don't have to worry about Cowboys content again this next week.
It's a good feeling to have as content.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be selfish there, but my initial thought was I'm shocked. I guess there's so much here, right? There's there's so much more that we need to know. There's so much more that is hard, that is such a point that there's so much that we need to know in order to kind of come up with
we're less than 24 hours into this.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is all we know right now is that Kellen Moore's been fired, and that it's been reported that Mike McCarthy is going to call plays next season.
Well,
that's all that we know at this point.
Also, we know that
Kellen Moore got hired.
That's the really interesting thing to me. Is he's already been hired as the Chargers offensive coordinator. So can we talk about that to begin with?
Yeah, let's talk about that first.
Because I saw, first of all, a lot of people on Twitter, like the Cowboy fans, for the most part, were excited, right? Because they, for whatever reason, they don't like Kellen Moore, and he ended up becoming the scapegoat.
Well, because the Cowboys just lost a game, so any change is good no matter what, right? Like, it doesn't matter what the change is, it's good. Like,
I saw a lot of respected beat writers and Twitter personalities being like, you know what? Hey, Kellen Moore's an upgrade over who we have in Buffalo right now, or who we have in Tampa Bay. Let's go out and get him, which is kind of funny. But
playoff teams that were saying that. Not like the worst teams in the league, like the Bills were saying this, and the Chargers were saying this. So
I do want to say the wording is important. Tom Pelissero's tweet, he said the Cowboys and Kellen Moore have mutually agreed to part ways.
Yes.
Kellen Moore is then rumored to be interested in the Chargers job, and he takes the job the next morning at like 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. What that tells me is that while the Cowboys might have wanted to move on from Kellen Moore, there's a chance that Kellen Moore also just wanted to move on from the Cowboys and kind of saw the writing on the wall and said, you know what? I don't have to be here with all this. I can go to 15 other jobs and take the job that I want. And he did. He took the best job that was available. He got within 16 hours of being let go from the Cowboys. That tells you quite a bit.
Yeah, that he's a highly sought after play caller in this league and considered one of the best young offensive minds in the NFL. And the Cowboys got rid of him. So look, there are so many angles here, but I guess the thing that that kind of lends to is this doesn't seem like a very well thought out plan. This doesn't seem like and again, I tweeted this out and even this got a lot of feedback. I want to see the full plan. Like what does this actually mean? Does this mean that we're going to be using some sort of form of the Kellen Moore offense that now Mike McCarthy is going to be calling? Or are we reinstalling the Mike McCarthy offense with whoever we actually get hired to be our offensive coordinator? That more on that later.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah.
But what is the actual particulars of it? Because that matters quite a bit. Because if we're talking about like wiping clean and installing a Mike McCarthy West Coast based offense with completely different terminology and, starting from scratch, maybe keeping some of the old stuff, but basically kind of redoing everything so that the terminology and the language is what Mike's used to, so that he can call the plays and be used to everything. I don't understand how that works at all. Just based on the larger team building 10,000 foot view of this team, I don't understand how that's incongruent with what they're trying to do with the rest of the team at all.
My question to you is, why did the Cowboys feel like they needed to shake things up? Not only with Kellen Moore, we should also mention their quarterback coach, Doug Nussmeier, also let go, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Why let Kellen Moore and Doug go after a 12-5 season where you went 4-1 with a backup quarterback? You were one of the highest scoring teams in the league. Why did you feel the need to make such drastic changes in an NFC that, frankly, looks like it could be wide open again next year?
Well, especially since, some roster reconfiguring seemed to get you a step further than where you were the previous year.
Yes.
So I don't understand why, even further roster configuring couldn't get you another step forward. I don't know. I have a hard time kind of coming up with the logic for this move. And I feel like there's still more that we don't know. I think you're right in the sense that there probably was actually a true mutual desire on both sides to part ways. But I guess there's lots of other things that just don't add up. Like, why do this with the last year of Dak's contract, right? The last year of Dak's guaranteed contract, right? Yeah. Like that he's definitely going to be on the team. Why do this when you probably only have one more season of Dan Quinn left, unless your plan is to get Mike McCarthy fired and have Dan Quinn be the head coach? Why do this while getting rid of the quarterback coach, who probably could have just easily stepped in and been your offensive coordinator, and then they could have run basically the same system as you had last year, except McCarthy calling plays and Dak knowing all the terminology and understanding the offense at the level of a quarterback who's been in that system for 7 years. There's lots of things about this that we don't have answers to, that don't make a lot of sense, like when considered with all the other elements of what's going on.
Yep. Man, we got a lot to dig into here. Let's talk about Mike McCarthy and then the offensive coordinators that have been rumored to be mentioned with the Cowboys. Before we do that, we want you to know that this podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than the Prize Pick projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They are currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada. Just download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. If you deposit $100, that means Prize Picks will give you $100. Deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. I also want to let you know about the Senior Bowl. Locked On is heading into the Senior Bowl. Get inside analysis from the hosts that cover the NFL's next generation in college and find out which NFL draft boards have these players climbing. Are they falling? Subscribe to the Locked On NFL Draft Show for nightly live shows from Senior Bowl starting on Tuesday. They'll have shows on Wednesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll also have a show coming up tomorrow with Chad Ryder. Had to bump Chad tomorrow because of the Kellen Moore news, but make sure you guys are ready for that. We're going to talk about the offensive coordinator, Landon, but to me, it almost doesn't matter for the reason that we heard yesterday from Tom Pelissero, which is Mike McCarthy is going to call plays. I just want, what are your initial thoughts on the report that McCarthy is going to be calling the plays for this team next year?
I mean, again, I think the big thing here is whose plays is he calling? I don't have a problem with him. Like, if we're just talking about it's the playbook that we're going to tinker with a little bit, and he's calling, the kind of Cowboys offensive
plays, right? Like, It's gonna.
Then I've got a
be.
problem, man. Then because they're gonna have to spend the entire offseason relearning an offensive system. I mean, obviously, there's probably aspects of it that are in the system now, but I'm assuming language is going to need to change. And basically, what you're doing by doing that is throwing out all that familiarity that gave Dak like an extra level of special because he knew all the answers because he's been in the system forever and ever. So now you're kind of putting Dak on the wrong foot, but for at least early
Do you
on the
think
season.
there's a chance that they just use whatever system they were using and it's just Mike McCarthy calling the plays now? Because
that makes the most sense to me. Like
it makes the most sense, but at the same time, it's like, okay, why?
Well, I'll tell you why, because the alternate is to dust off the 10-year-old West Coast playbook that doesn't come from a Shanahan branch. It's been outdated and already been like, there have been like 4 different innovations back and forth since he's been calling plays in his system. And then you have to learn all of that. And the West Coast system is a very verbose language. It's got a lot of like really lengthy stuff.
You
so
would
it's
be purposely taking a step back and knowing that your offense is going to get worse doing that because it's just going to take you time to learn that system.
Which is totally fine, like in a vacuum. It's okay to take a step back to move forward, but it doesn't make sense with the contract situations with your head coach, the contract situation with your coach, the timeline of the players, the way that you've been set up on defense. It's not like I said, it's in of itself, it's not problematic, but the particulars of the way that this is going to be laid, like actually executed, considering all the other things that are involved, the contracts, the timelines, the everything else, it doesn't make any sense. You're ready to load up again this year. You got Quinn back. You need to find a way to get a step better this year, not take a step back this year and hope that 2 years from now you're going to take 2 steps forward. You don't have 2 years with this offense, basically. Sure. So I that's the part I don't understand is why take the risk of having to relearn a system which potentially which may make you better down the road if you're given multiple years to try to develop it. But we don't have that necessarily. Dak is basically on a 1-year guaranteed deal. McCarthy is not guaranteed to be here beyond this year. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, so let's give you some positives. The good news is that when McCarthy has called plays in the past, Green Bay's offenses have been really good. Like I'm looking at it now, like starting in 2007. This is in points per game. 4th, 5th, 3rd, 10th year Rodgers got hurt. 1, 5, 8, 1. Gave it up in 2015. They ended up being 15th in points. He does have he has a pretty good sense of calling plays. I think he's aggressive. You're going to see them pass the ball more. But we also have to remember why McCarthy gave up calling plays in 2015. It's because it took away from his ability to manage games. They were ending up losing a lot of these games because he couldn't focus on everything else that a head coach needs to do, including clock management. So the Green Bay ownership in the front office basically said, hey, you have to give up play calling to be a better head coach. I mean, McCarthy's a lot older now. He's in his 60s now. Is he suddenly going to be really good at multitasking and doing both? I don't know. I would feel better about it if he had like a grizzled vet assistant head coach that worked with him for a long time. But the Cowboys fired that guy as well. So I don't know what we're doing.
Exactly. And they also fired the other coach who could have possibly known the offense even if they wanted to stick with what they currently have. They fired the quarterback coach. So again, all those things you said are true. And then on top of that, it's not just like McCarthy having to, be the play caller. It's having to install this playbook while also being the head coach. So, his entire offseason will be led up with that. So, it seems like a bunch of folks all kind of making decisions mutually, exclusive of each other. They're not like there's no like conversation about where the overall team is headed.
Does it feel like this is a not a ploy, but a way for Mike McCarthy to potentially keep his job longer?
Oh, that's 100% what's happening. That's what's happening, but it doesn't even make sense for that, I guess is my point. Like, if I'm Mike McCarthy, like, I understand the idea of like, well, this is my last chance to keep my job, but like that's not even like, this is not a good plan for even trying to execute that. because the bar is set at being better than the division round of the playoffs for this year, not for the the next coming. Like, you're not getting like another shot to rebuild this or like an extra 2-year a reprieve. We just fired our offensive coordinator for having basically a top 5 offense and then getting us to the division round. Like, if you do anything less than that, you're getting fired either way. So why take the risk of the potential of taking steps back in an offense that you're learning, which is a high level of probability in your last season to kind of prove things. And in order to you have to get to the NFC championship game to save your job. Why would you make huge changes when slight alterations got you one round better than you were previous season? It doesn't make sense even for that angle, I guess is what I'm saying. It doesn't even make sense for a guy trying to save his job.
All right, we're going to talk about potential offensive coordinator candidates in just a second, but I do want to ask you, if we're being overly optimistic, is there any way that this could work out for the Cowboys? Like, how does this go well for the Cowboys in which it's like, hey, maybe in hindsight we made the right move?
Look, I think that there's certainly realms where this can work out. I mean, Mike McCarthy is not an idiot. He has called plays in the NFL, and like you mentioned, he's done it well. There is a possibility that, like I said, maybe they do decide to use the scheme from last year, or at least kind of keep some of the language so there isn't so much of a huge learning curve. I think McCarthy, as far as calling the plays in game, I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with Mike McCarthy calling plays per se. What I have a problem with is how unthought out this seems to be, how it doesn't mix with the timelines. I think there is a possibility that McCarthy could be better than Kellen Moore at calling a game, as just an offensive coordinator in a game. But the question becomes, like, all the specifics, like, how do we get from here to there to the point where McCarthy is it's not about who's a better play caller, Mike McCarthy versus Kellen Moore. It's about who's a better play caller, Kellen Moore with his complete offensive system installed and 4+ years of experience of offensive players that are played in that system, or Mike McCarthy, who is installing a new offensive system and trying to get everyone to understand how to run the system that he's installing right now. And can that be immediately better than an experienced offense in a Kellen Moore system? I think that what seems to be is less likely. I think there is a good chance that that if given several seasons to kind of get everyone used to the system, that Mike McCarthy system could be better than Kellen Moore's. Maybe, not for sure, but it's about doing it in the time frame that's been laid out that I have concerns of. Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it likely? I don't know. And that's really the problem, is that I felt like it's a huge swing and the upside isn't where I need it to be in order to take a huge swing like this, I guess.
Again, I'm going to keep referencing this. It's not like Mike McCarthy is super young either. He's not like a Sean McVay who's 36 years old and probably has the energy to be able to do both, run an offense, call plays, and manage a game. I'm pretty sure that he's the second oldest play caller in the league now, behind only Andy Reid. Pretty sure. I can't think of anybody who would be older than him.
Offensively, I can't. No.
Kind of wild. Let's talk about the offensive coordinators, if they even really matter. But
do you want to?
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app that you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're new to FanDuel, that's actually even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Just download the FanDuel app now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on literally everything from money lines to point spreads to who will score the first touchdown to how long will the national anthem be to what color will the Gatorade be that's dumped probably on Nick Sirianni's head at the end of the game. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid instantly when you win. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your first no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, now the most depressing part of the show. Let's talk about offensive coordinator names that have been rumored for the Cowboys. So the number one name that we've heard for a couple weeks now is Brian Schottenheimer. He seems like he's going to be the favorite to get this job. How you feeling about Brian Schottenheimer as your offensive coordinator?
Not great, Bob. I mean, this is the guy who, led the Seattle offense to want to completely blow themselves up. I mean, frankly, he did in Seattle what everyone's basically upset with Kellen Moore doing here in Dallas. I mean, I don't know, like, I've never gotten it with Schottenheimer. I just never have understood it. Like he did such a great job as a quarterback coach in Indianapolis that Andrew Luck retired. He went to Seattle and he had offenses that rate high, but I mean they just ran the football almost all the time. When in a time when Russ cooking was a legitimate thing. And just did not allow it. None of this really matters, like you said, honestly, because it's going to be Mike McCarthy calling the plays. And I could trust Brian Schottenheimer to, install an offense during a week. I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. I just think it's just not a lot of like super creative offensive minds in that room. That's the problem I have. You have Mike McCarthy, who we mentioned is like the second oldest play caller in the league outside of Andy Reid. And I don't know that Mike McCarthy is Andy Reid. Then you've got Schottenheimer, who's, another extremely conservative play caller as the organizing principal.
Well, one of my favorite stats is how efficient are you as a passing offense, right? So I like to use yards per attempt. Do you know how many times Brian Schottenheimer, who's been an offensive coordinator for 12 years, ranked inside the top 10 in yards per attempt passing the ball?
How many?
Big ol' 0. His best season ever was 2019 when Seattle ranked 12th in yards per attempt in the passing game. He just has not been somebody who has been proven to be an efficient at getting his quarterbacks to play at a high level. His average ranking is 21st in the NFL in yards per attempt in the passing game. It's just not what he does well.
Yeah. I just, I mean, again, like, I don't know how much he's even doing if McCarthy is calling the plays. So it's more just about an organizing coach. But it's just like, it's a nepotism hire. It's let's honestly, right? Like, I mean, come on. He did such a great job with Seattle that after Seattle, he went to go be the passing coordinator for the Jaguars in 2021. Like, with so it's not like he got a bunch of great experience under Urban Meyer that he's going to be that he brought to the organization this last year. And then he's been sitting in the organization as kind of a consultant this whole year. And now it's hard not to think of it as this is like, McCarthy's back pocket offensive coordinator when this very scenario happened. I don't know, man. It's a McCarthy Schottenheim offense is about as depressing as you can hear. I don't want to be that like completely negative guy. And there is certainly ways that this could work out fine. But I mean, just on the face of it, as of right now, without further information, like who's the offensive line coach, who's organizing the run game, who's organizing the pass game, what offense are we using, like without any of that, any extra information, my filling in the blanks answers are not great, and I don't love what I'm coming up with right now.
Now, he's not the only option the Cowboys have. There's been a couple other guys that have been rumored, and I actually like this next option quite a bit better. Ben McAdoo, who was with the Cowboys in 2021, doing some special assistant stuff. He got hired as the Carolina offensive coordinator this year. And frankly, Carolina did some cool things at the end of the year on offense. When he was, I mean, they were really running the ball well. Sam Darnold was playing well. McAdoo does have experience with McCarthy. He was there all those years in Green Bay before becoming the Giants offensive coordinator and eventually the head coach. And even the Giants weren't awful on offense with Ben McAdoo, but I got to say, I think this one's at least a little bit more intriguing to me than Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, it's not great.
It's not great. It's not great. Like, yeah, like it's kind of like the lesser of two evils situation.
That's exactly what it is.
It's not like, it's not great. I mean, Ben McAdoo is not an offensive coordinator that you're looking forward to having. Frankly, we weren't even looking forward to having him as an offensive assistant. So, yeah, like, look, we can talk about this and point these folks out, but I think, if it's a Schottenheimer, if it's a McAdoo, like these guys are just, the organizing coaches throughout the week. It's a Mike McCarthy offense that we're talking about.
We should also mention the Cowboys have to satisfy the Rooney Rule before they hire a head coach, which, I mean, it's why the Rooney Rule unfortunately doesn't work in the NFL, because we know that it's going to be one of these two guys, right? And so who are you going to get that has any type of, like, is Eric Bieniemy going to want to come and interview for this job? No way. You're going to go from leaving Andy Reid, the oldest guy who's calling plays, to Mike McCarthy, who's the second oldest guy calling plays. Do you go out and try to get like a Pep Hamilton, who I don't know how has any experience, or like Byron Leftwich? Can you imagine if the Cowboys fired Kellen Moore for Byron Leftwich, who got fired because he was so bland and bad in Tampa? Like,
Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator when the Cowboys beat Seattle in the 2018. So, what's any different by getting Leftwich at this point, right? So, I mean, that's the thing about this. Again, like, you fired your offensive coordinator for not calling plays the way, I guess, for not calling plays well enough in the playoff game, but you managed to potentially hire one of the only offensive coordinators that this team has actually beaten in the playoffs. So it doesn't make any sense. It's not adding up. It's change for the sake of change, which is never a good idea. Like, have a plan. And again, I'm giving them a bit of a doubt. Maybe it's just that I don't know the plan. Maybe that we don't have all the information. Maybe that's the fact. And I'm willing to accept that. But everything that we know right now doesn't seem to add up to a congruent plan of team-wide.
I will say one of the things that maybe McCarthy will make sure that the Cowboys do this offseason is don't go into the year with only having one viable receiver who's healthy, right? Like, I got to believe McCarthy's going to be like, hey, if you're going to let me call plays, you better let me go out and get the receivers that I need to use this offense. Go look at the receivers that Green Bay had kind of during the time when McCarthy was calling plays. Like, they were loaded with Greg Jennings and Randall Cobb and Donald Driver and Jones. Why can't I think of Jones's first name? But Devontae Adams later, and they just had weapons galore.
James Jones, right?
James Jones. Maybe that's what McCarthy realizes. Like, hey, we got to go get more wide receiver talent, and maybe that will help your offense be a little bit more consistent from game to game.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you could do that and then keep Kellen Moore, I think you got something. But it's like, I look, and again, I guess that's where I'm at again, is that I feel like some of this is that the fixes and the changes that folks were looking for could have been done in personnel. And that I think that's probably where I would have gone. We're going to see how this all shakes out. But like I said, I need a lot more information at this point before I can start feeling good or satisfied about the plan for the offense moving forward.
Really quickly before we go, how do you think Kellen will do with the Chargers?
I think he'll kill it. I think he'll do great. I think, I think honestly, ultimately the Chargers are the Chargers. So he probably will get screwed by, just the worst injury luck of all time, I'm sure.
It does feel like a good fit though, between him and Herbert, right?
Absolutely. I think they're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday. And on Monday, local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Again, we'll be back tomorrow with Chad Ryder to talk about the Senior Bowl. We'll see you guys then.